I can't lose both twins tonight. Ethan Calloway read the text message 3 times before slowly lowering the crystal glass in his hand. The private dinner meeting around him faded into silence, though nobody at the table understood why the billionaire Texo had suddenly gone pale. Outside the 72nd floor windows, Manhattan shimmered with cold January rain, but Ethan barely noticed the skyline anymore. His eyes stayed fixed on the glowing screen of his phone. Unknown number. One sentence. One message that felt like someone had reached into his chest and reopened a wound that had never truly healed. Across town, Claire Bennett sat on the edge of a worn-out couch in her tiny Queens apartment while her 6-year-old twins slept under blankets beside a space heater that rattled every few seconds. The apartment smelled faintly of instant soup and laundry detergent. Rainwater tapped against the old windows while Claire pressed trembling fingers against her forehead, trying not to cry from exhaustion. Lily's fever had climbed again an hour earlier, and Liam had started coughing hard enough to scare her. The urgent care clinic wanted another payment before they would refill Lily's prescription. Claire had checked her bank account 3 times already. $42.16. That was all she had left until Friday. She swallowed hard and stared at the text thread she thought belonged to her coworker Melissa. She only wanted to ask if she could borrow a little money for the medicine. But after hitting send, she realized the number was wrong by 1 digit. Normally, she would have apologized and moved on. Except less than 30 seconds later, her phone buzzed. Who is this? Claire froze. The reply came instantly, almost cold, almost demanding. She hesitated before typing back. I'm sorry. Wrong number. For a moment, there was nothing. Then another message appeared. Are the twins okay? Claire stared at the screen, confused by the question and strangely unsettled by the feeling behind it. Whoever this man was, he sounded serious. She glanced toward the couch, where Liam slept curled protectively beside his sister. Not really, she admitted before she could stop herself. My daughter's sick, and I'm just trying to figure things out. Miles away, Ethan stood abruptly from the table. One of his investors called his name, but he ignored him completely. His heartbeat had become painfully loud. 6 years. 6 years of searching quietly. 6 years of wondering if he had imagined her smile, her voice, the tiny silver necklace she used to wear during that one perfect summer in Boston before she disappeared from his life, without explanation. Claire Bennett. He had never forgotten her. And now somehow, impossibly, a random text message had landed in his hands at exactly 2:13 in the morning. Ethan walked toward the floor-to-ceiling windows, rain streaking across the glass like blurred memories. His private investigator had finally located Claire 3 months ago, but Ethan never approached her. Every report said the same thing. Single mother. Financial struggles. 2 children. No husband. He told himself staying away was the right thing to do. If Claire had wanted him in her life, she would have found him years ago. But now there were twins. Ethan closed his eyes briefly. Twins. His assistant noticed the change in his expression immediately. Sir. Ethan looked down at his phone again before speaking in a dangerously calm voice. Get a car ready. Now. Ethan's jaw tightened. Now. Back in Queens, Claire tucked another blanket over Lily and sighed softly when the little girl finally stopped shivering. The apartment lights flickered once. Claire rubbed her tired eyes and leaned back against the couch, unaware that somewhere below the rain-soaked skyline, a black limousine had already begun moving through the streets toward her building. Claire did not notice the black limousine outside her building until someone knocked softly on her apartment door 20 minutes later. She glanced at the clock on the microwave. 2:48 in the morning. Her stomach tightened instantly. Nobody visited this late unless something was wrong. She moved quietly so she would not wake the twins and looked through the peephole. A man in a dark gray suit stood calmly in the hallway holding an umbrella at his side. Behind him, the dim yellow lights of the apartment corridor flickered weakly. Claire opened the door only 2 inches. Can I help you? The man offered a polite nod. Ms. Bennett. Her pulse quickened. Who are you? My name is Daniel. I work for Mr. Ethan Calloway. Claire frowned immediately. The name sounded familiar, but her exhausted brain could not place it. I think you have the wrong apartment. No, ma'am, Daniel said gently. Mr. Calloway sent a car for you and your children. Claire stared at him in complete disbelief. Somewhere downstairs, the engine of the limousine hummed quietly beneath the rain. What? Daniel handed her a folded black umbrella. Mr. Calloway would like to speak with you tonight. Claire almost laughed from confusion. I do not know any Ethan Calloway. But the second she said it, a memory flickered through her mind. A younger man standing beside the Charles River in Boston. Dark wool coat, cold hands wrapped around a coffee cup, intelligent blue eyes watching her like she mattered more than anything else in the world. Ethan. Her breath caught softly. No, it could not be him. Not after all these years. Daniel noticed the shift in her expression immediately, but remained professional. Mr. Calloway insisted I bring you safely. Claire looked past him down toward the rain-covered street where the sleek black limousine waited under glowing streetlights. It looked completely unreal beside the cracked sidewalks and old brick buildings of her neighborhood. This has to be some kind of mistake, she whispered. Before Daniel could answer, a small sleepy voice came from behind her. Mom. Claire turned quickly. Liam stood in the hallway rubbing his eyes while holding his dinosaur blanket against his chest. His blonde hair stuck up messily in every direction. Lily appeared seconds later beside him, pale from fever but curious. Both children looked toward the stranger nervously. Daniel's expression softened the moment he saw them. Then something unexpected happened. His face changed slightly, almost like recognition. Claire noticed immediately. What is it? She asked sharply. Nothing, Daniel replied too quickly. But Claire already saw the way his eyes lingered on Liam's face. On his eyes. The same blue eyes Ethan used to have. A chill moved through her chest. Mom, Lily whispered weakly. Who is that? Claire forced a calm smile. Nobody important, sweetheart. Daniel reached into his coat and carefully handed Claire another item. A small white envelope with her name written across the front in elegant handwriting. Claire opened it slowly. Inside was a single card. 3 words. Please trust me. Her fingers trembled. She recognized the handwriting instantly. 8 years disappeared in a heartbeat. Summer nights in Boston. Cheap pizza after midnight. Ethan laughing for the first time because she teased him about his expensive shoes. The way he once promised he would never disappear from her life. Then he did. Claire looked up slowly. Why now? She whispered. Daniel lowered his voice. Because after tonight, Mr. Calloway does not want to stay silent anymore. Downstairs, rain continued pouring across the empty streets while inside the apartment. Ethan sat alone in the back of the limousine, staring at an old photograph hidden inside his wallet. The picture was faded from years of being unfolded and folded again. Claire smiling at 21 years old beneath a summer sunset. His thumb brushed across the image carefully before he looked toward the apartment building window above him. One light was still on. Claire had spent 8 years teaching herself never to depend on anyone again. Yet somehow she found herself sitting inside the back of a black limousine at 3:15 in the morning with her sleeping daughter resting against her shoulder and Liam staring wide-eyed at the glowing city outside the rain-covered window. The leather seats felt softer than anything the children had ever touched before. Liam quietly ran his fingers along the stitched interior before whispering, Mom, are we rich now? Claire forced a tired smile, even though her heart had not stopped racing since leaving the apartment. No, sweetheart. But honestly, she did not know what was happening anymore. Across from them, Daniel remained respectfully silent while the limousine moved smoothly through Manhattan streets, shining with rain and reflections from giant billboards overhead. Claire kept glancing toward the divider window, separating them from the driver, half expecting this entire night to suddenly make sense. It did not. Nothing about Ethan Calloway made sense anymore. The last time she saw him, he was ambitious but unknown, working 18-hour days while building a startup company from a tiny rented office in Boston. Now his face appeared on magazine covers in grocery stores. Billionaire. Investor. One of the most powerful men in New York. And somehow, after all these years, he had found her. Lily shifted weakly against Claire's chest. Claire brushed damp blonde hair away from her daughter's forehead and frowned. Still warm. Too warm. Daniel noticed immediately. Mr. Calloway already contacted a pediatric doctor. Claire looked up sharply. What? The doctor is waiting at the penthouse. Claire blinked in disbelief. He called a doctor before I even agreed to come? Daniel gave a small nod. Mr. Calloway does not like uncertainty. Claire almost laughed at the understatement. The Ethan she remembered used to plan every detail of his life down to the minute. He once created a spreadsheet for a weekend road trip. But she also remembered the version of him nobody else saw. The man who brought her hot chocolate during late study nights. The man who secretly paid her college bookstore debt after overhearing her crying on the phone with her mother. The man who looked at her like she was the only calm thing in his chaotic world. Claire swallowed hard and looked away before the memories could hurt too much. The limousine finally slowed in front of a towering glass skyscraper overlooking Central Park. Liam's eyes widened instantly. Whoa! Even Claire could not hide her shock. The building looked more like a luxury hotel than an apartment residence. Rain slid down massive windows while suited doormen hurried forward with umbrellas the second the limousine stopped. "This is where he lives?" Claire whispered. Daniel opened the door carefully. "Top 3 floors." Claire stepped out slowly, holding Lily close while cold rain mist touched her cheeks. The entrance lobby glowed with marble floors, golden lighting, and fresh white orchids taller than Liam himself. Everything smelled expensive and impossibly clean. Liam immediately pressed himself closer to Claire. "Mom," he whispered nervously. "Are we in a castle?" Daniel smiled faintly for the first time. "Something like that." They entered a private elevator that moved so smoothly, Claire barely noticed they were ascending. Her pulse grew faster with every passing second. Then finally, the elevator doors opened directly into a massive penthouse wrapped in floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan at night. The city lights stretched endlessly beneath storm clouds. Claire stepped forward slowly, almost unable to breathe. And there, standing near the windows with one hand in his pocket and the skyline glowing behind him, was Ethan Calloway. Older, broader shoulders, sharper jawline, expensive black suit perfectly tailored. But the moment he turned around, Claire recognized the same blue eyes instantly. Ethan looked at her like the past 8 years had disappeared in a single heartbeat. Then his gaze shifted downward toward Liam and Lily. He froze completely. The room fell silent. Ethan stared at the twins for several long seconds without speaking at all. And when his eyes finally met Liam's again, something inside his expression quietly broke. For one long silent moment, nobody moved. Ethan stood near the windows overlooking Manhattan while rain traced slow lines across the glass behind him, but his attention remained completely fixed on the 2 children beside Claire. Liam stared back curiously, clutching his dinosaur blanket tighter against his chest. Lily rested weakly against Claire's shoulder, half asleep from fever, her small hand curled around the sleeve of Claire's sweater. Ethan felt the air leave his lungs. He had prepared himself for this meeting 1,000 different ways over the last 3 months. He imagined awkward introductions, anger, tears, accusations. But nothing prepared him for seeing his own eyes looking back at him through a little boy standing in the middle of his penthouse. Claire noticed the exact second Ethan's expression changed. The calm billionaire mask disappeared for just an instant, replaced by something raw and deeply shaken. Her stomach tightened immediately. "Ethan," she said quietly, "why are you looking at them like that?" Ethan forced himself to breathe normally again. "Because they look familiar." Claire's eyes narrowed slightly. Before she could answer, another man entered from a nearby hallway carrying a medical bag. "Dr. Harris," Ethan said quickly without taking his eyes off Lily. "Please." The pediatric doctor approached gently and smiled toward Claire. "I just want to check her temperature and breathing, okay?" Claire hesitated at first. Years of struggling alone had taught her not to trust wealthy strangers offering help for free. But Lily looked exhausted, and the warmth of her skin against Claire's shoulder worried her more by the minute. Reluctantly, she nodded. While the doctor carefully examined Lily on a large cream-colored couch, Ethan remained standing several feet away beside Liam. Neither of them spoke at first. Liam looked around the enormous penthouse with wide eyes. "Your house is bigger than our whole building," he whispered. Ethan almost smiled despite the heaviness in his chest. "Sometimes it feels too big." Liam studied him for another second before asking innocently, "Are you famous?" Claire closed her eyes briefly in embarrassment. "Liam." But Ethan crouched slightly to meet the boy at eye level. "Something like that." Liam tilted his head. "You kinda look like me." The room suddenly became very quiet again. Claire's heart skipped painfully. Ethan's face did not move at all, but inside, every emotion he had buried for years crashed into him at once. He had seen the resemblance in photos before. The investigators' reports had included school pictures from a distance, blurry images taken at playgrounds, snapshots outside grocery stores. But photos had not prepared him for hearing the words out loud. You kinda look like me. Ethan swallowed carefully before replying. People say that sometimes. Claire stared at him now with growing suspicion. Something felt wrong. Too emotional. Too personal. How long have you known where I was? She asked suddenly. Ethan looked toward her slowly. 3 months. Claire's face paled. 3 months. Claire, you found me 3 months ago and never contacted me? The hurt in her voice hit harder than anger. Ethan looked away briefly toward the rain outside the windows. I did not know if you wanted me to. Claire laughed softly in disbelief. You disappeared first, Ethan. He opened his mouth, then stopped, because the truth was far more complicated than she knew. Before he could answer, Dr. Harris stood up. Her fever is high, but her lungs sound clear. She needs rest, fluids, and antibiotics tonight. Ethan immediately turned toward his assistant. Get the prescription filled now. Daniel nodded and disappeared instantly. Claire watched the exchange with confusion. Everything moved around Ethan like he controlled the entire world with a single sentence. Yet despite the expensive penthouse, the billion-dollar confidence, and the powerful voice everyone obeyed immediately, Ethan still looked strangely nervous standing near her. Then Lily stirred weakly on the couch and opened her sleepy blue eyes toward Ethan. For several seconds, she simply looked at him quietly. Then she whispered something so softly the room almost missed it. Mom, she murmured. Why does he look at us like he already knows us? Claire could not stop thinking about Lily's question. Even after the doctor left the room and Daniel returned with medicine from a 24-hour pharmacy downtown, the strange tension inside the penthouse only grew heavier. Ethan stayed unusually quiet while Liam explored the massive living room with cautious curiosity, touching bookshelves taller than he was and staring at the glowing fireplace built into a marble wall. Claire sat beside Lily on the couch, gently helping her drink water, but every few seconds she caught Ethan watching the twins with an expression that felt almost painful. Finally, Claire looked directly at him. Enough. Ethan lifted his eyes slowly. What? You are hiding something. The city lights reflected faintly across his face while thunder rolled somewhere beyond the windows. For a moment, Ethan looked like he wanted to deny it. Instead, he walked toward the kitchen island and poured himself a glass of water he never drank. I know this night feels insane, he said quietly. Claire folded her arms tightly. You disappeared 8 years ago, became one of the richest men in the country, tracked me down without telling me, sent a limousine to my apartment at 3 in the morning, and now you are staring at my children like you recognize them. So yes, Ethan, it feels insane. Her voice cracked slightly near the end despite her effort to stay calm. Ethan closed his eyes briefly. Hearing the hurt in her voice made the guilt inside him worse than ever. He had replayed their last conversation thousands of times over the years. Claire crying outside her apartment in Boston. Him trying to explain. Her telling him to leave. Then suddenly she vanished before he could fix any of it. I tried to find you, Ethan admitted softly. Claire laughed bitterly. After how long? Immediately. She stared at him in disbelief. That is impossible. It is the truth. Claire shook her head. No, Ethan. The truth is you disappeared right after your company got investors. Your assistant told me you were too busy to talk to me anymore. Ethan's expression changed instantly. My assistant? A woman named Victoria. Ethan frowned hard. Victoria worked for my mother. Claire blinked in confusion. What? Ethan slowly set the untouched water glass down. Claire, I never told anyone to push you away. Silence filled the room. Claire suddenly remembered details she had ignored years ago. Victoria showing up unexpectedly at her apartment. Expensive heels. Cold smile. An envelope full of money sitting on Claire's kitchen table. You are holding Ethan back, Victoria had said. His future cannot survive distractions right now. Claire's chest tightened painfully at the memory. Your mother knew about me? Ethan looked away. She knew everything. Claire felt suddenly dizzy. For 8 years, she believed Ethan chose ambition over her, that he abandoned her willingly once success arrived. But now uncertainty cracked through every painful memory she had built her life around. I never took the money, Claire whispered quietly. Ethan looked back at her immediately. I know. Claire froze. Ethan's jaw tightened slightly, as if he regretted saying too much. How would you know that? She asked carefully. He hesitated too long. That was enough answer by itself. Claire slowly stood from the couch. You investigated me. Ethan did not speak. How much do you know about my life? She demanded. The rain outside intensified against the glass while Liam and Lily quietly watched from the couch, sensing the emotional shift in the room. Ethan finally answered in a low voice. Enough to know you have been carrying everything alone. Claire stared at him with hurt and disbelief. You had no right. I know. Then why do it? Ethan looked toward the twins again before answering. His voice became almost painfully honest. Because the day I saw their photographs, I could not breathe for 10 full minutes. Claire's heartbeat stopped cold. Ethan met her eyes directly now, emotion finally breaking through his controlled composure. Claire, he said quietly, how old are they? The question hung in the air so heavily that even the sound of rain against the windows seemed to disappear for a moment. Claire stared at Ethan without answering while her heart pounded painfully inside her chest. She knew exactly what he was asking. Not just their age. The timeline. The truth. Liam climbed quietly onto the couch beside Lily, sensing the tension but not understanding it. Ethan remained completely still near the kitchen island, though Claire noticed the slight tightening in his jaw like he was bracing himself for impact. Finally, she spoke. They turned 6 in November. Ethan lowered his eyes briefly. November. His mind calculated the dates instantly whether he wanted it to or not. Boston. Their last summer together. The months before Claire vanished. 6 years old. Twins. He felt almost dizzy. Claire watched the realization spread across his face and suddenly hated how vulnerable she felt standing there. For years she survived by keeping painful memories locked away. Now every wall she built around herself was beginning to crack open inside this enormous penthouse, filled with soft lighting and impossible wealth. You already knew, did you not? She asked quietly. Ethan did not answer immediately. That silence was enough. Claire laughed softly, but there was no humor in it. Oh my God, Ethan finally spoke. I suspected. Since when? His eyes met hers again. Since I saw Liam's school photograph. Claire turned away sharply, trying to process the mixture of anger, shock, and heartbreak flooding through her chest. So this whole night? No. Ethan interrupted quickly. Claire, I swear I did not bring you here to accuse you of anything. Then why? She demanded. Because I could not stay away anymore. The honesty in his voice made her falter for just a second. Ethan slowly walked closer, but kept enough distance not to frighten her. Do you have any idea what it felt like reading that text tonight? He asked quietly. I spent years convincing myself that maybe you were happier without me. That maybe finding you would only destroy your life again. Then suddenly I get a message saying the twins are sick. His voice roughened slightly near the end. I could not ignore that. Claire folded her arms tighter. You do not get to act concerned now after disappearing for 8 years. Ethan's expression darkened with pain. I never stopped looking for you. Then why did you not come find me sooner? Ethan hesitated again. That hesitation said everything. Claire stared at him carefully. There is something else. Ethan looked toward the windows, rain reflecting across his face. 3 years ago, he admitted quietly, I finally learned what my mother did. Claire felt her stomach tighten instantly. Ethan continued slowly. Victoria was following her instructions. My mother believed you would ruin my future before the company launched publicly. Claire shook her head in disbelief. So she paid me to disappear. Yes. And you were telling me you had no idea? Ethan's voice dropped lower. I thought you left because you wanted to. The hurt in those words sounded painfully real. Claire remembered the unanswered calls, the emails that suddenly bounced back, the apartment Ethan moved out of without warning. At the time, she believed he chose ambition over love. She never imagined someone else had been controlling the situation behind the scenes. Ethan exhaled slowly and looked toward Liam and Lily again. Liam was helping his sister sip water carefully while whispering little jokes to make her smile. The sight hit Ethan harder than anything else tonight. His son comforting his daughter exactly the way Ethan used to comfort Claire during hard days. Same eyes. Same quiet protectiveness. Ethan felt emotion rise sharply in his throat. Do they know about me? He asked softly. Claire immediately shook her head. No, why not? Because I did not even know if you cared. Ethan looked shattered by the answer. Before either of them could speak again, Liam suddenly glanced up from the couch toward Ethan with innocent curiosity. Mom, he asked softly, is this the guy from the picture you keep in the kitchen drawer? Claire froze instantly. Claire's face lost all color the second Liam mentioned the photograph. Ethan looked at her instantly, while 1,000 emotions collided silently between them. For a moment, nobody spoke. The only sound came from the rain tapping softly against the giant penthouse windows and the distant hum of traffic far below Manhattan. Liam looked confused by the sudden tension. "What picture?" Lily asked weakly from under her blanket. Claire forced herself to move again. "It is nothing, sweetheart." But Ethan already knew it was not nothing. His heartbeat pounded hard enough to hurt. "You kept a picture of me?" he asked quietly. Claire looked away immediately. It was old. Ethan stared at her for several seconds before speaking again. "Why would you keep it if you thought I abandoned you?" Claire swallowed hard. That question hurt more than she expected. Because the truth was embarrassing. Because no matter how angry she had been, no matter how many nights she cried while raising the twins alone, some part of her never fully let him go. "I do not know," she admitted softly. Ethan's expression shifted with something dangerously close to hope. Claire noticed it immediately and shook her head. "Do not do that." "Do what?" "Look at me like this changes everything." Ethan stepped closer slowly. "It changes something." Claire laughed quietly, exhausted more emotionally than physically now. "You are a billionaire living above Central Park, Ethan. I work double shifts at a coffee shop and count quarters for subway fare. We do not even belong in the same universe anymore." Ethan looked almost offended by the statement. "Do you think any of that matters to me right now?" "It matters to your world." Claire glanced around the penthouse. The polished marble floors. The designer furniture. The skyline view worth more than entire neighborhoods. "People like me do not fit into places like this." Ethan answered immediately. "You used to." The words landed harder than he intended. Claire looked at him sharply, emotion flickering across her face. Because she remembered. Late nights in tiny apartments before the money arrived. Sharing takeout noodles while Ethan built coding presentations on an old laptop. Dancing barefoot in the kitchen because they were too broke for real dates. Back then, she fit perfectly into his life. Before everything became complicated. Before power and ambition and manipulation destroyed them. Ethan's voice softened. "Claire, I never stopped." Suddenly his phone vibrated loudly on the kitchen counter. Ethan glanced at the screen, and his expression darkened instantly. Claire noticed immediately. "What is it?" Ethan ignored the call at first, but it continued ringing. Finally, he answered sharply. "What?" A nervous male voice responded through the speaker loudly enough for Claire to hear pieces of it. "Sir, there are already rumors online. Someone saw the limousine outside the Queen's address. Reporters are asking questions." Ethan closed his eyes briefly. Of course they were. The media followed his every movement constantly. "Handle it," he said coldly. "We are trying, but your mother already called twice." Ethan's jaw tightened instantly. Claire caught the reaction. "Your mother knows I am here?" Ethan lowered the phone slowly without answering right away. That silence was answer enough. Claire felt panic rise immediately. "No." She stepped backward toward the couch. "Absolutely not." Ethan ended the call quickly. "Claire, listen to me. Your family destroyed my life once already." Her voice cracked with rising fear. "I am not letting them anywhere near my children." Ethan moved toward her carefully. "Nobody is going to hurt you." Claire shook her head. "You cannot promise that." For the first time all night, Ethan had no immediate response. Because deep down, he knew exactly how ruthless his family could be when protecting their image. Claire grabbed her bag quickly. "We are leaving." Liam looked up nervously. "Mom." Ethan's expression changed immediately. "Claire, it is almost 4 in the morning and Lily is sick." "I do not care." "Please." The single word stopped her briefly. Ethan rarely begged anyone for anything. But now his voice sounded raw with fear. "Just stay until morning," he said quietly. "Let me help you this once." Claire looked toward the twins. Liam looked exhausted. Lily could barely keep her eyes open. Her anger battled against reality for several painful seconds. Then suddenly Lily began coughing hard into the blanket, her small body trembling with fever again. Ethan reacted instantly, already moving toward the medicine on the counter before Claire even stood up. Claire instinctively moved toward Lily the moment the coughing started, but Ethan reached the medicine first and carefully handed her the small bottle of antibiotics with a glass of water already prepared. His movements were calm and precise, yet Claire noticed the concern in his eyes immediately. Not the distant concern of a wealthy stranger trying to help. Something deeper, more personal. Lily's small hands trembled slightly as Claire helped her take the medicine. Ethan quietly pulled a thick blanket from the nearby couch and handed it over without saying a word. Liam watched the interaction carefully from beside his sister. "You act like you know us," he said softly. Ethan looked at the little boy for a long second before answering carefully. "Maybe I wish I did." The honesty in his voice made Claire glance at him again despite herself. She hated how difficult this night was becoming. She came here expecting confusion, maybe manipulation, maybe answers. Instead, she found a version of Ethan she no longer recognized. Not the ambitious young man chasing success. Not the cold billionaire from magazine covers. This Ethan looked exhausted, regretful, human. Lily slowly relaxed against the couch cushions after the medicine finally settled her coughing. Ethan lowered the lights in the living room slightly, and the penthouse grew quieter, softer somehow. Manhattan still glowed beyond the giant windows, but inside the room, everything suddenly felt strangely intimate. Too intimate. Claire sat beside Lily while Liam eventually curled up near the fireplace with a blanket almost twice his size. Within minutes, both twins were asleep. Ethan stood watching them silently from across the room. Claire noticed the emotion on his face again. "You keep looking at them like you missed something important," she whispered. Ethan let out a slow breath. "Because I did." Claire looked down at her hands. Neither of them spoke for several seconds. Then Ethan quietly walked toward the windows overlooking Central Park and loosened his tie for the first time all night. The billionaire image cracked slightly in the reflection staring back at him. "Do you know what I thought when I first saw their photos?" he asked softly. Claire did not answer. Ethan continued anyway. "I thought the universe was punishing me." Claire frowned faintly. "Punishing you?" Ethan nodded slowly. "I spent years building companies, buying buildings, chasing deals worth billions of dollars." He gave a humorless laugh. "And somehow none of it mattered the second I realized I might have children who grew up thinking I abandoned them." Claire's chest tightened painfully. Ethan's voice became quieter. "I told myself staying away was the right thing. That maybe your life was peaceful without me in it." He looked toward the sleeping twins. "But every report I received said the same thing. You were exhausted, working nonstop, struggling alone." Claire immediately looked up sharply. "You had people watching me for years?" Ethan turned toward her. "Not at first. That is not better, Ethan. I know." His honesty disarmed her more than excuses would have. Ethan rubbed his hand across his face tiredly before continuing. 3 months ago, I sat in my office staring at Liam's school picture for almost an hour. His voice lowered further. "He smiles exactly the way you do." Claire felt emotion catch unexpectedly in her throat. Ethan looked directly at her now, with none of the billionaire confidence left. "I was terrified." "Of what?" she asked quietly. Ethan answered immediately. "That you would hate me forever." Claire looked away because part of her already had. But another part remembered the man from Boston too clearly. The one who stayed awake all night helping her study for exams. The one who kissed her forehead when she fell asleep on his shoulder during train rides. The one who once admitted, very quietly, that before meeting her he did not think people like him deserved happy endings. Ethan stepped closer slowly. "Claire, I never stopped loving you." The words hit the room with painful honesty. Claire's breath caught instantly. She looked at him, really looked at him for the first time tonight, and suddenly saw how tired he truly was beneath the expensive suit and perfect composure. 8 years of regret sat behind his eyes. Before Claire could respond, Ethan's phone vibrated again on the kitchen counter. He glanced at the screen, and his expression changed immediately. Claire noticed the tension return at once. "What now?" she asked quietly. Ethan stared at the caller ID for several long seconds before answering in a low voice. "It is my mother." Ethan stared at the phone vibrating on the kitchen counter while Claire watched him carefully from across the room. The name on the screen seemed to drain every remaining trace of calm from his face. For several seconds, he did not move at all. Then finally, he answered, "Mother." His voice turned cold instantly. Claire could only hear the sharp tone of a woman speaking through the phone, but she did not need the exact words to understand the message. Ethan's jaw tightened harder with every passing second. "No," he said flatly. Silence. Then again, stronger this time. "No." Claire had never seen Ethan look genuinely angry before. Not the frustration of stress or business pressure. This felt personal, dangerous in a quieter way. "You do not get to control this anymore," he said sharply into the phone. Across the room, Liam shifted slightly in his sleep, while Lily remained curled beneath the blanket with flushed cheeks. Ethan glanced toward them instantly, and the anger in his expression softened into something protective. "They are not a scandal," he said in a low voice. "They are children." Claire felt her breath catch softly. Ethan listened for another few seconds before finally answering with complete certainty. "If you come near Claire or the twins tonight, I will personally make sure you never step inside my company again." Then he ended the call. The penthouse fell silent once more. Ethan remained standing beside the counter for a moment, staring down at the dark screen in his hand like he was trying to calm years of buried resentment all at once. Claire slowly stood from the couch. "You would really do that?" Ethan looked at her immediately. "Do what? Cut off your own mother?" Ethan did not hesitate. "For them? Yes." Claire searched his face carefully, expecting arrogance or manipulation or some polished billionaire performance. Instead, she found exhaustion and sincerity. Nothing about this man felt rehearsed anymore. Ethan slowly walked closer until only a few feet separated them. "I spent years letting other people decide what mattered more than my own life," he said quietly. "I am not making that mistake again." Claire looked down briefly, overwhelmed by emotions she had spent years trying to bury. Anger, hurt, relief, fear, and somewhere underneath all of it, something softer she was almost afraid to recognize. Ethan's voice lowered further. "You asked me earlier why I looked at the twins like I already knew them." Claire met his eyes again. Ethan swallowed carefully before speaking. "Because every time Liam smiles, I see you. And every time Lily looks at me, I feel like I missed entire years I can never get back." Claire's eyes filled unexpectedly with tears she immediately tried to hide. Ethan noticed anyway. "Claire," she shook her head softly. "I do not know how to do this." "Neither do I." His honesty made her laugh quietly through the emotion. For the first time all night, it sounded genuine. Ethan glanced toward the sleeping twins before speaking again. "But I want to try." The words settled gently between them. Not pressure, not promises too big to believe, just truth. Outside the giant windows, the storm had finally begun to fade. Rain slowed against the glass while the first pale hints of sunrise touched the edge of the Manhattan skyline. Claire noticed the soft morning light reflecting across the room and suddenly realized how long the night had been. Everything in her life had changed within a few hours. Ethan followed her gaze toward the city before quietly walking to a nearby closet. He returned holding a soft gray sweatshirt several sizes too large. "You are freezing," he said gently. Claire hesitated before taking it. The familiar scent instantly brought back memories she thought she lost forever. Coffee. Cedarwood. Ethan. She closed her eyes briefly. Across the room, Liam stirred awake first and blinked sleepily at the sunrise glowing beyond the windows. "Mom," he whispered. Claire looked over immediately. Liam sat up slowly beneath the blanket and stared around the massive penthouse before his sleepy gaze landed on Ethan standing beside her. Then the little boy smiled softly and asked the question that made Ethan's entire world stop beating for one fragile second. "Are you staying for breakfast with us?"